My wife cheated on me with her boss, then stole $250, $0 from our joint account during our divorce, claiming she needed it for emotional support. And now she's suing me to keep the house we can't afford. I feel like I've been betrayed by everyone I trusted. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing out how my wife turned out to be the biggest betrayal of my life. It all started with small signs. She was more distant, secretive about her phone, and suddenly she was working late more often. I brushed it off at first. I mean, everyone gets busy, right? But then I started noticing things that didn't add up. Her phone would be constantly on silent when she was around me, and she'd get defensive if I asked about her plans. She'd brush me off with those bitchy little smirks, saying I was paranoid or jealous. Yeah, right. Like I was imagining her sneaking out in the middle of the night or deleting texts. It all came crashing down one evening when I came home early from work. I'd been feeling a little off all day, so I decided to surprise her. I figured maybe we could have dinner together or just talk. I unlocked the front door, and that's when I saw her. Not just her, but her boss, Mark, in our bedroom. They were tangled up on our bed like a couple of teenagers. Her shirt was half unbuttoned, and Mark was clearly in the middle of some serious sexcapades. I froze. My stomach dropped to my shoes. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, the woman I trusted with everything, was cheating on me with her boss. And they looked so comfortable, so unashamed. I didn't say a word. I just backed out quietly, trying to process what I just witnessed. My mind was racing a million miles a minute. How long had this been going on? How could she do this to me? I felt a mix of shock, anger, and heartbreak all at once. I wanted to storm in there and scream at her, but I knew that wouldn't help. I needed to think, to plan. That's when I realized this was bigger than just a one-time thing. Had been lying to me for months. The signs, the secretive texts, the late nights, they all made sense now. Over the next few days, I became obsessed with finding out the truth. I hacked into her phone, checked bank statements, and snooped through her emails. What I found was worse than I expected. Not only was she cheating with Mark, but she was also stealing money from us. A lot of money. Nearly $250, $0 from our joint account. I couldn't believe it. She claimed she needed it for emotional support, said she was overwhelmed and couldn't handle the stress. But I knew better. She was spending it on Mark, on fancy dinners, trips, and who knows what else. That level of betrayal hit me hard. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I confronted her one night, knowing I had enough evidence. I laid everything out on the table: her affair, the stolen money, the lies. Her reaction was infuriating. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk and said, "You're overreacting, Jason. It's just sex. It doesn't mean anything. You're being paranoid." She lied so effortlessly, trying to make me feel like I was crazy. But I was. I knew what I saw, what I found. It was all real, and it shattered whatever I had left of trust in her. And that's when I realized I had to decide what to do next. Because this wasn't just a betrayal of my marriage, it was an attack on everything I thought was real. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The house felt like a prison. Kept up her act, acting innocent, acting like I was the crazy one for even bringing up her affair and the money. She threw in some tears, some fake apologies, but it was all just a show. I could see through her, clear as day. She was good at lying, better than I ever thought possible. She kept insisting she needed the money for emotional support, that she was overwhelmed with everything, and that Mark was just a distraction, nothing serious. I knew better. I knew she was lying, just like she lied to cover her tracks, just like she lied to everyone else about her stress and her need for money. But what really tore me apart was the fact she had stolen so much. We had plans, dreams, a future. I thought we were building something real, and she just took it. All like it was nothing. I found out she nearly $250, $0 from our joint account over a span of a few months. She told me she needed emotional support, but I found receipts of her spending thousands on trips, jewelry, and private dinners with Mark. It was like she was living a double life, and I was the idiot who never saw it coming. I started to question everything. Was she ever really in love with me? Was I just some placeholder, someone she married so she could have a stable life while she chased her fantasies with Mark? The thought made me sick. I spent the next week spiraling, trying to piece everything together. I hired a private investigator, something I never thought I'd do, but I was desperate. Turns out, had been seeing Mark for over a year. They had a whole affair, and she made sure to keep me in the dark, even lying about her meetings, her late nights at work, and her stress that she claimed only I could help her with. Meanwhile, she was screwing her boss and draining our savings. I couldn't believe I had been so blind. I kept replaying the moments when she'd brush me off, her bitchy smirks, her dismissive attitude. It all made sense now. She had been cheating, stealing, lying. Everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. The worst part was how she spun her lies when I confronted her again. She told me, "Jason, you don't understand. Mark is just a friend. I was stressed and I made a mistake. It's not a big deal." Yeah, right, a mistake. She insisted she needed the money because she was depressed, that she didn't want to hurt me, that she loved me but was just weak. I wanted to believe her at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. The texts, the bank statements, the secret conversations, all of it pointed to one thing. She had been lying to my face for months. I felt numb most days. Every time I thought about what she had done, I'd get this crushing wave of anger and sadness. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let it go on so long. I was angry at her, obviously, but I was also furious at myself for not seeing it sooner. I kept thinking, how could she lie so effortlessly? How could she steal from us and then act like I was the problem? And Mark, her boss, what kind of man screws a married woman and then expects her to keep it all a secret? The entire situation felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. One night, I decided I'd had enough. I told her I wanted a divorce, that I couldn't stay married to someone who lied, cheated, and stole from me. Her reaction was a mix of tears and anger, trying to guilt-trip me, saying I was overreacting, that she needed me, that she loved me. But I knew better. Love doesn't include betrayal on this scale. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and honestly, I felt betrayed by everyone I trusted, my wife, her boss, even myself, for not seeing it sooner. I knew I had to get out, to cut my losses, and to start rebuilding from the wreckage she left behind. But I also knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Not by a long shot. After I decided to file for divorce, everything moved fast, at least it felt that way. I had to get my head straight, figure out how to protect myself from her lies and whatever else she might try. I hired a lawyer and started gathering all the evidence I had: bank statements, texts, emails. I wanted to make sure I had everything on record because I knew wouldn't go down without a fight. She was already spinning stories about how she was sorry and needed help, but I wasn't buying it. My trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. The day I served her divorce papers, she flipped out. She called me a monster, said I was ruining her life, and accused me of being paranoid and controlling. That bitchy smirk she still wore when she wanted to make herself look innocent. It made my blood boil. She insisted she was the victim, that I was overreacting, that Mark was just and that she'd never cheat on me. Yeah, right. I had the evidence. The texts, the bank withdrawals, the hotel receipts, everything pointed to one thing: she was lying and she knew it. But what really set her off was when I told her I was going to take her to court over the stolen money. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her walk away with hundreds of thousands of dollars that she didn't earn. I wanted justice. She argued she needed the money for her emotional well-being, that she was going through a rough patch, and that I was being cruel. I told her that her emotional support was a lie, that she was just using it as an excuse to justify her betrayal. She threw a fit, yelling that I was ruining her life, that I was a terrible husband, and that she'd make sure I paid for this. That's when I knew she wasn't going down without a fight. Meanwhile, I started planning my next moves. I knew I had to be smart. I hired a forensic accountant to trace her spending. Turns out, she drained nearly $250, $0 from our joint account, money we'd saved for years, money we'd planned to use for our future. She told me she needed it for emotional support, but I found receipts for luxury trips, jewelry, and private dinners with Mark. It was obvious she'd been living a double life, and I was the idiot who never saw it coming. I felt sick every time I thought about how she'd lied to my face about everything: her stress, her need for money, her love for me, all fake. The worst part was how she kept trying to spin it in her favor. She'd call me a controlling, jealous husband who didn't understand her. She'd cry about how overwhelmed she was, how she just needed a break, how Mark was just as she trusted. But I knew better. I knew the truth. I knew she'd been cheating on me with her boss, stealing from us and lying every step of the way. It was like waking up from a nightmare I couldn't escape from. One night I caught her again. I had gone to the house to pick up some things and I found her trying to pack a bag. She was acting suspicious, nervous, like she was planning her escape. I confronted her right then and there. She snapped at me, trying to deny everything, but I had enough. I told her I knew about Mark, about the money, about everything. Her face went pale for a second, then she started crying, trying to guilt-trip me into saving her. That's when I realized she'd been lying to herself as much as to me. She thought if she cried enough, I'd forgive her, let her walk away and forget the whole thing. But I couldn't. I was done. I told her she had to leave, that I was done being played for a fool. Her bitchy attitude, her manipulative tears, they all felt like punches in the gut. I couldn't believe I'd been married to someone so selfish, so dishonest. The betrayal cut so deep I didn't know if I'd ever recover. I felt like I'd lost my sense of reality, like the person I thought I knew was just a mask she wore to hide her true self. I knew I had to get out, to protect what little dignity I had left. And I promised myself from that moment on, I'd never let someone betray me like that again. It was a painful lesson, but one I'd carry with me forever. After left, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. The house was eerily silent without her bitchy comments or her manipulative smirks. For days I just sat there trying to process everything. Her affair, the money she stole, the lies. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see her slipping away from me slowly but surely. It hurt worse than I thought it ever could, realizing I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd just thrown it all away for some guy at work. I threw myself into gathering all the evidence I could, bank statements, her text messages, the hotel receipts. I knew I needed to prepare for the court battle ahead. I wasn't just fighting for the money she stole, I was fighting to get my life back. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, just in case she tried to run or hide anything else. I wanted to make sure I had everything on record so I wouldn't be again. The more I dug, the more disgusted I became. She'd been lying to me for over a year, sneaking around behind my back, spending money we didn't have, and pretending everything was fine. Meanwhile, the lawyer started making moves. She filed for custody of the house, claiming I was unfit because I was emotionally unstable after discovering her affair and theft. I couldn't believe her audacity. She was the one who betrayed me, who stole from us, and now she was trying to turn the tables. I knew I had to fight hard. I wasn't going to let her take our house, our home, just because she wanted to spin her lies and manipulate the court. I had enough evidence to show she was the one at fault, cheating, stealing, lying. But I also knew the court system could be unpredictable, especially when someone is willing to lie and manipulate the truth. The day of the court hearing was one of the worst days of my life. Showed up with her bitchy smirk, trying to look innocent like she was the victim. Her lawyer argued that I was emotionally unstable, that I was not capable of making rational decisions, and that she needed the house for stability. The judge listened patiently, but I could tell he saw through her act. I presented all my evidence, bank records, the texts, the hotel receipts, the witness statements from the investigator. I explained how she'd been living a double life, cheating and stealing from us, and that I was the one trying to fix the mess she created. Lawyer tried to spin it as irreconcilable differences, but I interrupted her. I told the court everything, the affair, the theft, her manipulative attitude. I wanted the truth out there because I knew if I didn't fight for it, she'd walk all over me. And that's what scared me most, losing everything I worked for, everything I thought was real because of her betrayal. The judge took his time, looked over the evidence, and finally made his decision. He awarded me sole custody of the house, citing her financial misconduct and infidelity as reasons why she wasn't suitable to keep it. I was relieved, but at the same time I felt hollow. The damage was done, and I knew it would take a long time to rebuild. After the court case, true colors came out even more. She started sending me angry messages, accusing me of ruining her life, and threatening to sue me for custody of the kids, which she didn't have, thankfully. She claimed she was the victim, that I was trying to control her, but I knew better. She'd lost all credibility. The money she stole, the affair. The lies, all of it was out in the open now. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, and I had to focus on moving forward. I started looking into therapy, trying to deal with the emotional wreckage, and slowly began rebuilding my life from the ground up. What really hit me was how much I'd let myself be blind to her true nature for so long. I kept making excuses, thinking she was stressed or overwhelmed, but deep down I knew she was just selfish and manipulative. The betrayal cut so deep, but I learned a lot from it, about trust, about boundaries, about never ignoring the red flags. I also learned that sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to fight back with everything you've got. Because if you don't, someone like will just keep taking and taking until there's nothing left. And I refuse to be that person who lets someone destroy everything I worked for without a fight. After everything I went through in court, I thought I might finally get some peace. The house was now legally mine, and I could start piecing my life back together. But even then, the aftermath kept hitting me. In waves, constant barrage of angry messages, her attempts to smear my name, and the emotional toll of losing the woman I thought I knew left scars I knew wouldn't fade overnight. I felt betrayed not just by her actions, but by the whole system, like I'd been and left to pick up the pieces of a life I barely recognized. I decided to cut ties with entirely, blocked her number, shut down her emails, and avoided any contact. I realized that engaging with her only gave her more power over my emotions. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life, going back to work, reconnecting with friends, and trying to regain some sense of normalcy. I also started therapy not just to deal with the heartbreak, but to understand how I let myself get so by her lies. It was a painful process, but slowly, I learned to forgive myself for trusting her too much, and to accept that some betrayals run so deep, they change you forever. The money she stole still haunted me. I had to figure out how to recover what I could, but I knew most of it was gone, spent on her trips, her lifestyle, her affair with Mark. I contacted the bank, filed reports, and worked with forensic accountants to trace any remaining assets. It was a long, draining process, but I was determined not to let her theft ruin me completely. I started saving again, carefully, slowly rebuilding my finances from scratch. It was humbling, realizing how fragile everything was, but also empowering. I had to start over, and I was finally ready to do that on my own terms. Meanwhile, I kept my eye on. She was trying to manipulate others, spreading stories about how she was the real victim. But I didn't buy it. The truth was out there, and I knew her well enough now to see her for what she really was. A selfish, manipulative woman who'd do anything to save herself. I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. Anger because she'd destroyed my life, and pity because I knew she'd ultimately end up alone, with nothing but her lies to keep her company. Karma, I guess, has a way of catching up with people like her. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and it can be shattered in an instant. I also learned that you have to stand up for yourself, even if it means fighting tooth and nail. I wish I'd seen the red flags sooner, but I also know that some people are just good at hiding who they really are. The most important lesson: never ignore your instincts. If something feels off, dig deeper. Because if you don't, someone like will take everything you have, your love, your money, your peace, and leave you with nothing but the wreckage. Now I'm focusing on healing, on rebuilding my life, and on making sure I never let anyone betray me like that again. It's not easy, and I know there will be scars, but I'm determined to move forward. I want others to know that even in the darkest moments, you can find a way out. Trust your gut, protect yourself, and never let someone's lies define you. Because, in the end, the only person who truly cares about your future is you. Looking back now, I realize that my life has been completely turned upside down, and honestly, I don't think I'll ever fully recover from all of it. But what I do know is that I learned some hard truths about trust, about betrayal, and about myself. I used to think that love meant blindly trusting someone with everything. Turns out, love also means protecting yourself, knowing when to walk away and recognizing the red flags before they blow up in your face. I've come to understand that some people, no matter how much they pretend to care, are just out for themselves. Showed me that the hard way. She was bitchy, manipulative, and utterly selfish, and her actions proved that she valued her own desires far more than any commitment or honesty. Her affair with Mark, her theft, her constant lies, they all painted a clear picture of her true character. I used to believe in the fairy tale of happily ever after, but life isn't always that simple. Sometimes the best thing you can do is cut your losses and walk away, even if it hurts like hell. Now, I focus on rebuilding my life step by step. I work on my career, reconnect with friends and family, and try to find some peace within myself. I've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others, but I refuse to let her define me or control my future. The betrayal was a wake-up call, one that made me realize how important it is to trust your instincts, to set boundaries, and to never ignore the warning signs. Because if you do, someone will take everything from you, leaving you with a broken heart and a shattered sense of self. Most of all, I want anyone reading this to take away one thing. Don't stay in a toxic relationship out of fear or hope that things will get better. Sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Protect your heart, your money, your dignity, because the world is full of people who will take advantage if you let them. And trust me, it's better to be alone for a while than to be with someone who only brings destruction. I've learned that the hardest lessons are often the ones that teach you the most. And in the end, I'm grateful for the clarity this nightmare has given me. I might be, but I'm stronger now. I know what I deserve, and I'm not going to settle for less anymore. Life's too short to waste on betrayal and lies. From here on out, I'm rebuilding, better, wiser, and more cautious than ever. And if there's one thing I want everyone to remember, it's this. Never let anyone steal your happiness, your trust, or your future. Because once it's gone, it's damn hard to get back.